Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed lunch. We're going to do the panel discussion now, and we've invited three thought leaders from the insurance industry. Tom van der Brulle, Reza Khorshidi, and Volker Büttner. But let me ask you to briefly introduce yourself. Tom.
Yeah, Tom van der Brulle, Munich Re, and I also have the privilege, as we're talking about the ecosystems, to be chairing the InsurTech Hub in Munich. So just as an information, I'm looking after the innovation portfolio of Munich Re Group as a whole, and yeah, I think we're going to talk to
Reza.
And I'm Reza Khorshidi, the Chief Scientist for AIG globally, and my role involves leading a team that is primarily focused around development of AI-first products, and these are software services as well as apps that are design-led and fundamentally developed to enable machine learning to inform and assist their users. But of course, we do research in machine learning as well as some synergies with adjacent topics in insurance that is relevant to machine learning.
Volker.
Yes, I'm Volker Büttner, leading the group innovation activities of Generali, and looking into new business models, new technologies, also outside the insurtech, fintech space, but also inside, and leading our venture innovation activities at a group level with VCs and startups. And I mean, during the screening and scouting, especially also looking for players that can help us to enrich an ecosystem proposition. And of course also contributing to the group strategy, because we are in a bit strategic times now where a lot of things change, especially when you talk about the ecosystem topic.
Yeah, ecosystems. I think that Reggie gave a brief introduction already this morning, and I think that also the keynote of Rakuten gave a big overview on what you can do if you think beyond the boundaries of your own industry. But you know, like looking at ecosystems, how would you actually define that? Reza, can I ask you what your definition would be?
Sure. I think fundamentally, ecosystems are a realization of the concept of sectors without borders. So, and the reason it became a possibility is due to advances and adoption of digital technology in various industries, including insurance. So as a result, we are seeing that with the advancements in the availability of digital tools and solution, sectors can go beyond their traditional borders. As a result, start to kind of integrate various offering under one umbrella and start to kill some of the frictions in the processes and gather more data, and also try to bring the network effect, which is all about, for example, the solution Nest for smart home tells its users, your neighbor is better than you, maybe you should start to be better at energy consumption. So in that sense, the network effect part of it is also another interesting thing.
Tom, anything you would like to add? How would you define ecosystems?
Well, an ecosystem is bringing together all the brains that can contribute to a discussion on a particular commercial or whatever political topic. And I think in the innovation management, and probably in the last 5 to 10 years with digitization, we've learned that we can't do things on our own anymore, and we need to organize us in order to learn from others and integrate, and that can be governmental and academic institutions, and can be corporates, and can be whatever it is, but we need to find, that's more the ecosystem, we need to find organizational solutions of how to bring these together.
Volker?
It's good that you ask for that question, because I think nowadays, these days, we talk a lot about ecosystem, and not everything we talk about is an ecosystem. So I think two things are really fundamental, and the one is that there is an integrated customer experience, which is seamless. On the other side, that you have an integrated bundle of services which is delivered, and then technology, AI can be enablers for that. But I think these are the two key components which differentiate an ecosystem from something different.
You already mentioned, Reza, that technology developments sort of was one of the drivers behind the ecosystem trend. Could you mention other key drivers that make this something different than just a hype?
Yeah, of course. I think one of the main drivers of this trend could be the rise in the expectation of the customers. Like for example, if you look at in the consumer side of insurance, if you look at what are other services that consumers are interacting with, for example, people order their taxi with Uber, which could be quite convenient. They do their retail kind of experience on Amazon. Again, same-day delivery, including fresh items and everything. So the convenience is at a very desired level with these sort of services. Then they go to get insurance. There could be sometimes issues around the inconvenience and delays in the process or speed, as well as things such as, for example, lack of transparency and clarity of what is it they're doing and so on. Again, none of these things are new to us in the industry. Many insurers are trying to improve it. But generally speaking, that's one of the drivers. We have got the same customers that are getting some of their services that are extremely convenient and drive a very good experience. Then on the insurance side, that's not happening sometimes, and that's where one of the drivers is. The secondary aspect, of course, is kind of related to technology, but is, in a sense, could be interpreted different from the core technology in a sense that it's a market competition. So some of these firms that are sometimes technology firms, they are seeing that actually ecosystem is not just a thing that is relevant to insurance companies. It's something that they see it from the other side of the story, that actually we are selling cars, we produce cars, we are driving the whole car ownership experience. Why don't we offer an additional package that covers the risk? Like if you think about Tesla, Tesla is selling units on an average price of $100,000 with a roughly 25% margin. So on each car they sell, they've got 25,000 profit. And what's the cost of insurance for a car? 1,000, 2,000 per year. It's quite an easy business for them to say, you know what, every Tesla car is fully insured from now on. The customers don't need to go to, I don't know, comparethemarket.com or something.
So it's technology, it's about changing customer expectations, it's about new marketing dynamics, market dynamics. Tom, anything you would like to add?
Yeah. Well, I think customers are looking for value and for trust and for choice. And that's what you need to put together. Now, you can look at it from different angles. And the question that you just raised is, and I want to build on this, is that the question is whether the insurance angle is the relevant one and where it is. And it can be in a couple of choices. But in other choices, as you just mentioned, it's a very different angle. And how do we integrate in this? Through using technology, but also through partnering with the right institutions, the right players that have access to and also that have the trust from the clients. I think that's the key question here.
Volker.
No, I would say there are really strong underlying dynamics that strengthen ecosystems in the future outside insurance, and it's even a question what role insurers are going to play, because so far the starting point is that there are not a lot of ecosystems where really insurers even orchestrate them or own them, or even other ecosystems, the ones that you mentioned, where insurers already on a global scale have a significant contribution. So the obvious areas you look into is then maybe in China, where you find some example with Ping An, outside in Europe and in other areas of the world, maybe something like the Vitality ecosystem. But there are not a lot of these examples, and so I think it's both an opportunity but also a risk to find the right role for insurers.
So I think that it's all about people are interested in a house, but not necessarily a home insurance. So how should we become part of that environment, that context where people actually think about houses and living nicely and things like that? That's of course something that's facilitated by technology and things like that. Well, that could be like a type of ecosystem. What kind of specific platforms or ecosystems do you see in the future of insurance playing an important role? Tom, can I ask you to give your views on that?
Well, that's a complex question, and I'm not sure whether we can solve that problem this afternoon. But there's different ways you can look at it. One is or I'll start differently. Insurance value chain seems to be becoming increasingly fragmented. So we don't have one insurer who covers the entire value chain from the capital markets to the customer front end. It's rather, and as we've seen also in these impressive examples that pitched this noon, is that we see different players who are contributing different processes of concepts of value to serve the customer, and the one who will really be relevant in this, I find, is those who can build a platform that can bring all these different experts and excellencies together. So that is going to be a very interesting question. The second angle is obviously the question of who has access to clients and who is in direct interaction with clients and can build up a trust that give clients such a good feeling that they will come back and ask you for your services, even if you're probably slightly less competitive and slightly less in price reasons or in product reasons than your competitors. So one is the fragmentation of the value chain, and the other is what's the value of client interaction. And I don't want to say you're not owning the client, because that doesn't sound very sympathetic. But at least you gained the trust from the client who will come back to you to get your services.
So taking your first point, technology, I think, Reza, you mentioned backstage that you were quite impressed with what you saw this morning with Black being on stage,
yeah.
Especially from that perspective. Could you expand on that a bit?
Well, I think what we saw there was quite interesting. Of course, it's an early stage story. Of course, there is a long journey for these sort of stuff to become the reality of the market. But still, the thoughtfulness of the platform was really striking in a sense that when experts in insurance think about the end-to-end value offering of the insurance, from capital market side of it all the way to the customer experience and so on, sometimes it seems such a scary thing. But if you go towards the first principle, by scary thing I mean like it seems so complex that nobody wants to change anything about it. But when you really go back to first principle thinking of really what is it that insurance is supposed to do and how is it happening today, but if you go to the first principle of insurance, could we do it differently? And I think the building blocks of these ecosystems exist out there. It's just a matter of thinking carefully about how to combine them to offer a new experience. And I think we are seeing examples of it, and I think Black was a good example, definitely.
But you like the way that they did it is, okay, they created like a technology infrastructure that is able to connect the dots, right? And connect the nodes and create new value.
I think it was, if I may, it was an excellent proof of concept, because it's very, with all my due respect, it was very simple, bringing it down to pragmatic solutions. But at the same time, they showed us that probably in a couple of years, if this works, I'm not so sure about the role of insurers in the future. So if you bring investors together with risk owners, and you don't need anyone in between, and then you've got those reportix guys who solve your problem of discretionary legal terms, then probably we'll have a different discussion in the next DIA in Amsterdam in a couple of years.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is a very good example, because these emerging ecosystems, they don't sit there and wait for insurers to contribute to it. So it's more on our side also actively to think what is our role there. And I think to break your $1 million question a little bit down in two questions, because the one that let's say on the vision is really difficult to answer, but at least two questions I think are quite obvious. The first is what do we do with ecosystems which are emerging in areas where at the moment we are doing the risk aggregation? Like that means in the car mobility space, in the living space, in the health space. I mean, we have our traditional products, but there are ecosystems emerging. What do we do there? And the second question is, what do we do differently than there? And I think there is at least two things that insurers can think about. First is going from a risk aggregation more to a risk mitigation model, and then play the role of a risk mitigator in these ecosystems, or even play a role to own and orchestrate some of these ecosystems. Much more difficult, but these are the questions we need to answer, and otherwise the others don't wait for us there.
But those two options that you mentioned both relate to risk. is there something that we can do because that there's more customer needs than just can be answered by risk mitigation? Are there new kind of services that you envision that would add new value to customers, either in B2B or B2C, but that could be an easy or logical expansion of the current functions of insurers?
On the customer side, there are at least two areas where absolutely there is also value that can be created, which we don't have at the moment. The first is how to acquire a customer. Insurance has been a push business in many areas. A lot of people don't wake up in the morning and say, I need that certain kind of insurance. So that means these ecosystems can also be a point of need if you sit at the right stage there to kind of have that push. Exactly. And the second thing is then, of course, you have a much higher interaction frequency with your clients, like we see, for example, in the Vitality business, where we interact indirectly, at least, through that with our clients almost on a daily basis. And so there are clearly also some benefits, yes.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's also what Reggie mentioned this morning. It's about moving upstream, where the real question is, where you can create new ways of engagement, new ways to understand customers, and transform those into new propositions.
And I think the move is both upstream and downstream. Like, for example, in some areas, you need to get closer to the customers, sometimes in an insurance sense, towards the distribution, sometimes towards the servicing at the point of claim and so on. So, like, for example, cyber is a good example where we started a few partnerships, and of course in the commercial offering of cyber insurance, where it's an emerging risk in a sense that the landscape of the threat is evolving really fast. There is not enough aggregated market data in a sense, given the low prevalence of claim, and on top of that, the risk of a catastrophic event is extremely there, and in that sort of situation, the traditional insurance offering might not work perfectly. So that's why, for example, we announced a few partnerships with the likes of Darktrace, which is an AI company that monitors the traffic using an algorithmic approach, and that enables us to not only be able to prevent the risk from happening, but also to be able to provide support post-breach and so on.
Yeah, I already read some great examples of things that took place during the Harvey hurricane, using all sorts of different company sensors that were placed to measure floods, early warning systems, but also, for instance, application of all sorts of new technologies such as drones to make people recover much faster than we were used to. Yeah, great examples, I think. So basically that's also how you can do new things in the claims area. Now, among the 55 insurtechs that we have here on stage, quite a few are also, of course, involved in assisting insurance carriers to manage their claims operations better or reduce costs in that area. To what extent do insurtechs provide a new ecosystem for you guys?
Well, I mean, the way I would like to see the positive in the insurtech story is that it is responding to a need. Like the need for upgrading insurance as an experience was out there. I mean, all the insurers know about it. All of them are actively trying to provide that experience or improve that experience. So in that sense, I think insurtechs are a good emerging trend in our industry. The other thing is that via partnership with insurtechs, carriers can end up bringing a little bit of a more nimble, fast-paced kind of experimentation in new directions that they think is a necessity for the market. So I think in that sense, I definitely see it as a very positive move. But I think the big risk is when, for example, they sometimes they might only focus on a little bit of a basic aspects of insurance, where a lot of key components of insurance might be forgotten, and that might redirect the investment in those directions. So I think, I mean, so far the story is definitely way more positive than negative. But I think as an industry, as the whole ecosystem of incumbents and startups, I think we should be mindful of what are the key things that as an industry we should offer to the customers, and based on that, in a synergetic way, try to improve the overall ecosystem offering.
Volker, looking at the role of insurtechs in developing ecosystems, I think that you're looking at the concept that you're working with you really look beyond just insurtechs, but also to different kind of new technologies or new technology corporations that work in that area. Could you share a bit of what you're doing in that area?
Yes, yes. So I'm even not sure if I have the latest definition of insurtech, because I don't know, but maybe 2 years ago or so, insurtechs were very much challengers, distribution focused, and so on. I mean, the companies that we see here, I wouldn't have called to some parts insurtechs quite a while ago. So that means for me and for us, it's much more relevant not to look at the definition and not only look in insurance space. Also, when we work with venture capital firms and startups to scout and screen new technologies, but to look at our value chain and to look, okay, well, how does the value chain look like now, and what new technologies can we bring in to advance it? And these technologies might well come from other industries as well.
Especially if you think beyond your own industry boundaries.
Absolutely. So just the example of robotic process automatization, it hasn't been, let's say, developed in the insurance industry, but I remember 2.5 years ago, we were one of the first applying these kind of technologies together with startups coming from other industries in insurance, and now they found also their home turf there. So that is something which is, I think, especially important. But not sure if this is ecosystem. When I go more to the ecosystem definition and about the risk mitigation approach, then one good example is, I think, in the medical space and the health space. We, for example, work together with venture capital funds, which are especially active in the development of health technologies, and that's very, very, very helpful.
So those would be medtechs rather than insurtechs.
Yes, absolutely. So these are medtechs, if you want to call it like that, but we can apply them within an insurance framework, and that's the way to look at it. So how can you enrich your value proposition beyond what you have been doing in terms of risk aggregation and classical sales to play a role in these emerging ecosystems? And there you need technologies from outside insurance, I'm quite convinced.
How's Munich Re doing that, Tom?
Well, first of all, insurtechs or technology startups, technology firms are an inevitable partner to work with. They do it better, with more depth and more focus, and you need to work. I think, to your definition of insurtechs, I think a couple of years ago we've looked at insurtechs as digital front ends for insurance. And I don't want to sing that song that, oh yeah, they haven't proven that they can be more successful than the incumbent, so let's lean back and be happy about it, and that this wave has gone past us. We're not yet there. Let's give these concepts more time to develop and really to redesign the customer interaction. But I'm coming back to the concept of the fragmentation of the value chain. You just have much more different technology firms, partners that contribute to a solution to the end client. And you're changing the concept of the client. So we are buying some of them, we're partnering with some of them, we are trying to look at them through venture capital funds, so we're trying to do it in a fairly intelligent way, in order to understand how can we really enhance the service that we're giving to clients. And this has become amazingly more complex than it was a couple of years ago.
Why is that?
Because technology has been accelerating this so much, and because we're now digitizing entire value chains rather than just the piece that interacts with the customer. But it's also become amazingly more fun, actually, to look at this and to bring it together. So we see it positively, but it is for us a challenge to stay on top of the discussion. You need to do much more things, and you need different people for that. So we are now really in a war of talent, and probably something that we weren't, or we didn't perceive to be a couple of years ago.
Is that also one of the reasons why you're chairing the InsurTech Hub Munich?
Well, that is one way of bringing startups from all over the world together.
Maybe you can explain a bit about what the InsurTech Hub Munich
The InsurTech Hub
entails.
Munich is a thank you for that, because I need to do it, but that is the advertising part now of the DIA. So the InsurTech Hub is an initiative of the German government in order to make sure that digital topics are being advanced, taken ahead, and Munich is an important insurance capital, and we're bringing together all these different contributors, academic institutions, corporates, technology firms, startups in Munich, trying to make it easier for the industry to interact and to use these different technologies that I've just tried to talk about.
But what I like about it is as well that you creating that connection with leading universities and business schools may also help to attract talent, entrepreneurial talent as well as insurance talent, to come to the industry with a more open view than they do today. I think you also mentioned, Reza, that talent, the war of talent, that's basically also something that is top of your agenda when it comes to building those ecosystems.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that, I mean, is a significant part of what consumes my attention these days in terms of my role. It's quite critical for us to be mindful of the fact that all these good stuff that we are talking about, transformation of the industry and so on, particularly around things that we never did traditionally as an industry, the direct implication of it is that we need to bring new set of talent, not in terms of the core skills, but also in terms of the thinking ability, because sometimes we might think of insurance in a certain way, but when a fresh eye comes in, they can see the story very differently. And I think that reimagination power that a new fresh talent brings to the industry is extremely invaluable. So yeah, I think, like, for example, in my team, we've got scientists, engineers, and designers, and they all come from different, like, for example, a machine learning scientist in an insurance company is not an old concept, it's a very new concept. Or, like, for example, having a visual designer or a UX designer or a full stack developer and so on with modern technology stack and so on. These are new for a lot of insurance companies. So, and then look on the other side of it, who are the other people that traditionally have been hiring them? Googles of the world, Amazons of the world, successful startups of the world. So it's a very tough competition, yeah.
I think it's extremely important to be close to that, and having these hubs is a great way to do that. And thanks for doing the marketing, because Generali is also part of the InsurTech Hub in Munich. But not only of that. So what we see, and this is maybe also something which we wouldn't have expected a few years ago. At the end, this is a quite local thing also. So that means in Munich you have a hub. We are also engaged in other hubs in other countries. And that is a great way also to connect your local entities with what is happening there. I mean, you have your headquarters there. We have our second biggest country there, but we also do a lot in Italy, in the ecosystems there, in Switzerland, for example, in Paris and France. And that's important to be there, to be close to these developments, to the talents, and yeah, you could also call that ecosystem, right?
But this has changed. I think a couple of years ago we did it for cultural reasons in the first place, because it was cool and because we didn't understand all the startups and why were they wearing hoodies, and it was also cumbersome and we wanted our ties back. Today, it's really much more about how do you get access to coders, how do you get access to AI specialists, to the real people that are creating value there. And that is also, this has become increasingly complex, and that's why we're, as the InsurTech Hub, and then the advertising part is over, we're partnering with Plug and Play, for example, who's doing an accelerator program. So to bring it in, we're partnering with DIA to bring the people all together to Munich next time, and make sure that we've got access to this. It's less for the culture and it's all cool and hype. It's very much business driven.
So it's new access, it's new talents. Taking, for instance, what you guys are doing with the Vitality program, that really goes beyond insurance. To what extent does it give you really new access to new type of clients, new talents? But maybe expand on the Generali Vitality program first a bit.
Yes. Yeah, so that's very much also business and impact driven. And I think what is special about the Vitality program of Generali is that it's that we were not only one of the first movers 2 years ago to bring that to Central Europe, but also one of the first to really having the aspiration to deliver on orchestrating such an ecosystem. And we didn't do that on our own. But in partnership with Discovery to bring the leading wellness ecosystem in the world to Central Europe. And that is something which is quite unique in several aspects, I think. As a first of all, it's a new way of doing insurance because it's exactly a different promise that you give to your customers, helping and engaging your customers to make them healthier every day. And also the way you deliver is completely different. So it's completely in partnership, not only with Discovery, but we also have partnerships with medical, in the medical area, in the wellness space, like with big brands like Adidas, for example, Garmin, but also in the reward space with Amazon, Expedia, to have this wellness and reward system established there, and that's quite more than just signing a contract and then you have a press release, right? This is a big effort also in the organization, mobilizing the whole organization. It was like a ring-fence startup within Generali to bring that to life. But it pays off because now we started 2 years ago in Germany. Now we are in 3 countries, 3 of our biggest markets with it already, and that's the way you can orchestrate these kind of ecosystems. On the other hand, it's quite you can't do that in every space, so you need to choose your bets.
But building ecosystems so requires also different talents to be able to build those ecosystems. Is that what you're saying as well? Did you need to acquire different people to, for instance, discuss with Adidas or with Garmin what to do together and things like that, or the new data streams that come from those connected devices and how you could use them?
No, absolutely. It's a different way of working, different skills, but you also can do it together with partners and a strong internal team, because also this was also like an internal change program, if you want. So it's not so often that within a big insurance company you can create something completely new in a startup environment. So some of our best talents got the opportunity to contribute to that, and together with the external partners, which also drove a lot of new and fresh ideas and initiatives there, you can do a lot more also internally than you think. Even the IT system for it, at the end, we could leverage from a best-in-class system in another country. So you find some jewels then also that you can use internally, which you maybe didn't think. But you're right, it's something which also needs some refresh and new ideas.
And I think the story should be way more fundamental than sometimes some people think, in a sense that a lot of time, just because of a supermarket has a website doesn't make it a digital business or a technology business. They're using some sort of and I feel like a lot of the time in our industry, just because some digital website goes up, we tend to think that we digitize the insurance offering. Whereas the story is way deeper than that. And like, for example, you mentioned things around, for example, ecosystems around health, let's say. There, I think in order for a true ecosystem to emerge in health, for example, you need to have things around medical science. Medical science itself has got a lot of deep disciplines. It could be genetics, it could be medical imaging, it could be heterogeneous data analysis, it could be the cardiology, neurology, all those things, the list goes on. Then on top of that, you need to understand finance of, let's say, retirement or life insurance or health insurance or wellness and so on. Then on top of that, you need to understand the users who, at the end of the day, if whatever we do at the interface of finance and medicine doesn't solve their pain, everything is waste of time and resource.
But looking at all the components that you just mentioned, all the nodes in the ecosystem, who could play like the orchestration role? Could it be an insurer, or would you say, like, looking at the variety of things that take place, that would not be appropriate?
Well, I think as an insurer, you would like to think, yes, insurers should play a key role because like there has been a survey by Bain recently where more than 80% of people who've been surveyed were saying that they would love to see insurers playing a key role in the ecosystems and also them offering it. There have been interviews by Accenture, by executives of the top insurance companies where more than 75% of them saw digital transformation and ecosystems as a key disruptor. So everything seems to be that customers want it, execs understand it. Why doesn't it happen? I think talent is the key, and the second thing is the market competition. Like Tesla example is a good one. I don't think they will sit back and wait until an insurer comes in and says, you know, one mobility ecosystem is mine and I accept Tesla and GM to be part of it. I think it's a mix of these things together. But generally speaking, I mean, insurers are in a unique place because their role in the ecosystem is regulated and is uniquely given to them. And as a result, they should use that as a reason to build on and expand further.
Tom?
You had a
No, I just said a
reaction.
spontaneous reaction because, of course, it's a great ambition for insurers to play a role, but I think we should be, let's face it, I mean, this is a completely different business, and I think it's not possible to switch from, let's say, yesterday traditional insurance business to tomorrow we suddenly orchestrate 20 ecosystems. So it's much more also about having really a strategic perspective on that, maybe for quite the first time since many years in insurance, we also need to have a really strategic perspective on where and how to play, and there might be very different answers for very different insurers based on what they can bring to the table. But I think very actively also choosing where to play and where not to play is really key there. It's a completely different game.
No, I mean, what I said was not meant to be that insurers should forget about every other industry out there and be the only sector in the world.
It's a great aspiration, right? But
no, I think it's a natural tendency for any business to try to kind of grow their offerings as far as it makes sense. And as I said, there are certain areas that it doesn't really make sense. Like, for example, insurers are starting to build search engines. Doesn't make sense. Insurers have started to build the next Tesla. Doesn't make sense. But insurers trying to be creative around offerings in health, I think makes sense. It's too early. The competition is not yet that mature for insurers to sit back and say, oh, it's too late for us.
So that could be like the first learning to share with the audience. Okay, depending on the specific domain, you need to see, okay, what you could do and how you would do it. Any other specific learnings from your vast experience that you would like to share when it comes to building and nurturing ecosystems? Reza, can I ask you first?
I think one of the things that I observe a lot when I talk to friends and colleagues, not just in insurance, around different industries, is that a lot of the time the groups and thinkers in different companies are thinking within a core discipline that they're part of. Like, for example, you see an insurance company has a data strategy where only an IT department is thinking about. Or like, for example, the reality is that why are we collecting the data today is to drive a lot of these insurers. And it's hard to imagine software without AI these days. So as a result, you need a scientist to be part of that data thinking. And also, if a scientist has an ambition, but it's not in line with a user's expectation, then you need to have a UX expert to be part of that conversation to say, we need to drive that user experience. That user experience could be better with AI here and there. Therefore, maybe we should start to collect this data here and there. So I think it's a multidisciplinary thinking at the highest quality of talent. I think that, to me, is the key thing, that without having it, everything else within a company stays a theory.
Tom, what would you be your most important learning?
Well, my learning would be that we need to be courageous again, enough again, to build up new business models. And this sounds, I mean, this is a complete banal buzzword, and I know that, so I need to be concrete. When you're looking at IoT, for example, and what the impact it's going to have on claims frequency, I mean, that is clearly disruptive to our business. So why don't we go into the risk prevention area rather than sitting there? So you can expand that role. We know what it's about. We know about risks. We know where they come from, how they evolve, and what to do about it. So couldn't we go into that? IoT for health is the same thing. I mean, so why leave it to fitness clubs or whatever, or providers to take care of that? Probably can move into that direction. The third example would be when you're sitting in front of a risk manager of an industrial company, whatever it is, Coca-Cola, I mean, did they burst in laughter when you tell them how few risks we're willing to take? So with all the data that we're collecting, we need to be, and that's the cyber example, we need to be brave enough and really move into the direction and suggest them something more relevant to their industrial reality.
Volker?
I think there are some very practical learnings and some strategic ones. So on the practical side, they're very easy. Look outside insurance and also outside insurance technology. If you build something internally, which is going to go in the direction which Tom just mentioned, which is a bit more disruptive, ring fence it and protect it. And on the strategic side, I would say make it a top priority for your strategy discussion. So we are not talking about another pilot in another market about a certain technology which is changing a certain part of the process, but we are talking about a bit like where and how to compete in the future, building on the strengths. And I don't want to let's say now drop buzzwords, but at the end it's really a strategic discussion in which ecosystems you're going to play a meaningful role. So you need to bring it to the top level to have your company aligned on that. That's a key learning, I think.
So to summarize, it's first of all about the opportunity to increase your relevancy for customers, then to wisely pick and choose where you want to compete and how to do that. Do that in a multidisciplinary fashion, because I think that's also not true with internally, but also in thinking strategically about those opportunities. Then I think it's about guts, which you mentioned, Tom, and about prioritizing, which you mentioned, Volker. And then last of all, okay, to really get things going, ring fence things and get things going. I think that would be the summary for today.
Some homework.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Please give them a hand. Thanks. Yes, you too. Well, next we're going to start with the third block of InsurTechs, and yeah, probably they'll start up the next video then. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of your afternoon.